So I'm up $13,000 swing trading this month, and this cannot go ignored because I've taken this exact same setup on Microsoft, which I showcased that we were up about $6,000 when I showcased it. We're up obviously more now, and I have no sign of selling on this just yet. But now I've taken the exact same setup on Amazon, on Google as well. And now obviously the most recent is going to be, and the most profitable of the day is going to be Amazon. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down. I'm going to show you my exact system of how I do this, how I've done this on so many other stocks, and how I continuously hit these banger swing trades. So from a fundamental perspective, I don't really go too much into these just because how I interpret the fundamentals is not going to be the same in how you interpret them. So I always stress to you guys that you should be doing your own due diligence, do your own research. I merely like to provide a technical look at these stocks. Fundamentally, I don't dive too deep, and that's something I really want you guys to learn and do for yourselves. So obviously, looking at some headlines and some news, Amazon is obviously looking very, very big, very bullish as per usual. It is one of the Mag 7 stocks as well. And one thing I will say, Amazon is probably the biggest player in e-commerce. They obviously are integrating AI properly. They have logistics, everything. So fundamentally, this has to make sense. And for any stock trade I break down, whether this is options or swing trading, the stock selection is the most important part and is the core of both of my strategies. If you do not have a good stock pick, this is, the whole thing here. You should not be taking trades if you don't do your due diligence on the underlying asset before you enter a position on them. Because yes, an example of this could be IREN, where I was down about 40% and then we rallied 30% in a day. In a single day, we rallied 30%. So obviously, if I did not believe in the stock, I would not be holding it. And then obviously, I'd probably panic sell and miss out on my gains. But in the case of Amazon, let's jump into this. So fundamentally, this was intact. Like I said, I'm pretty bullish on this long term. I still think this will be one of the big players. Obviously, this is a Mag 7 stock. So this strategy does seem to work the best on Mag 7 stocks, and is probably my favorite place to run them. But so what do we have here? This is my typical strategy, and I'm going to break it down. And the first thing that starts with is seeing where we are in terms of all-time highs. So as you can see, this is Amazon's all-time high at around the 278 level, as you can see here. So what I'm going to do is when we enter this trade, and I put a little circle here to show you the exact day, I'll put up proof of the trade as well, like when I actually entered it. And by the way, this was called out completely free on my Instagram story. I call out literally every trade that I take completely free just on my Instagram story. Whenever I take them, you guys will know within like 10 minutes of the order being filled. So that being said, make sure to go follow me on Instagram at CYRN. All right, so like I said, the first thing we're going to do is check where we are in terms of all-time highs. And the rule of thumb here is you need to be about 10 to 15% off all-time highs. So I'm not looking at Amazon until we are about like right here. So from all-time highs of about 278 until we reach about 236-ish. So until we hit this 236 level, I'm not interested. I need to be at least 10 to 15% off its all-time highs. Now, this gives me a good spot where I can say, hey, you know what? Amazon has had a good pullback, a little bit of a bear situation right here, but this is temporary because obviously on a higher time frame, all you see is this. On a lower time frame, you're seeing something like this and then that. So basically, we are just trying to find this, and we are doing our best to find this higher low. So in a case like this, that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to try to identify, where is 10 to 15% and where would I like to actually get involved in the trade. Now, Amazon did have a bounce right from this area and pushed off, and we rallied from this low about 14%, which is really cool. That's great. But this is not where I entered the trade. I wanted to see some bullish momentum still. And obviously, as you can see, if you guys just know basic market structure, you can see this high right here is what I call a swing high. And the best part about this indicator is it's literally just called pivot highs and lows. And all this does is basically mark out the highs and lows. So you can visually see it. So as you can see very clearly, if I just draw a line, you can clearly see this market structure shift from making lower lows and lower highs to finally making a higher high. So we know this is kind of a good indicator that we are going to go bullish from this area right here. So what are we going to do now? What I'm going to do is I am going to start looking for my strategy because I've already identified we were 10 to 15% off the all-time highs, which comes to step 2, which is going to be checking the most recent high. So once I find the most recent high, seeing as this is where I entered, what I'm going to do is we need to be at least 5 to 10% off the most recent high before I even think about an entry. And as you can see, to this level right here, this level of support, This was about 8.73%. So this fits the system of being 5 to 10% off the most recent high. Now, if I look from right here to this support level, that's 1%, about 1.5%. If I look at this support level, this is about 5%. So this is a place where I could have, started to build a position in the company. But you know what, like you can see how compressed we are right here. And this is, I guess, discretion a little bit here where you can see like, we're kind of like compressed in this area right now. So nothing that we love. Personally, this is where I just want a bigger discount on this. So I can see that we have the support level right here, here, and here. So I could have made an entry in between. So you guys know that I like to take my entries at support levels or in between two strong supports. And you can see how many times we've retested this one support level right here. You can see 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, 4 touch, 5 touch, 6, 7, 8. Jesus, I sound like Tory Trades now with how many touches that we're making here, but ignore that. But you can see this is a very commonly tested support level. Nonetheless, this is the level that I preferred. I like getting a bigger discount and I like buying lower. If this move actually bounced right off this support level and just rallied from here, then you know what, trade's gone, and that's nothing to be upset about. There is always other trades on the table, so there's no need to force a trade if I don't like it here. So this is the support level that I did choose for this trade. And that being said, does it fit the system still? Obviously, that support level has to be 10 to 15% off all-time highs, and we are 15% from the all-time high, which is amazing. It has to be about 5 to 10% off the most recent high, and it's about 8%, which is amazing. And then obviously the next step is checking if we are tapping into a key level of support. And to me, this is the key level of support that we are looking for. Now, this is where I placed my entry. And I don't blow my load on the entire first entry, because if we were to continue dropping, I want capital set aside to average into this company. And I only say average into the company when you are very confident in the stock. This has to be a company that you genuinely want to own long term. This is why you'll never hear me, guys, give you a stock pick or buy this stock. None of that. This is only because these are companies I believe in personally. And this is why I always say never copy my trades one for one without doing your due diligence. Like maybe you guys are getting a good idea, or maybe you're making a good thesis off my watch list, but specifically, you should not just be blindly copying my trades at all. So, obviously do your own due diligence and whatnot, but like I said, so we have an area of support here where I started to build a position in. Now, as you can see, I can measure it out here. So from where I tagged into this to the low here, we weren't even 5% yet. And 5% is kind of where I'm like, let me evaluate this. Are we down a little bit too much right now? 5% in drawdown is where I'm kind of like, what are we doing here? This is like a warning point for me where I say, should I be concerned? What's going on? And we didn't even reach that. We were very close to it, but nothing ended up happening. And obviously the big catalyst here that sent us flying was Amazon's earnings. As you can see, amendments to the 5-year revolving credit agreement updates terms without altering core obligations. We had a surprise beat, and this looks phenomenal, 215%. There was obviously a revenue beat as well, and looks like they absolutely just smashed their earnings. So when we're kind of catching a falling knife in this situation, you can look at it as, yes, we're catching a falling knife. You can see this one giant red Diddy candle just slicing through right there. But for me, this is where I'm building a position. It's no longer just about, let me try and find the bottom. This isn't day trading. We aren't trying to find a bottom here. We're looking to start building a position for a trade around a key level after we've done our due diligence and checked off a few other boxes. So now, once we have entered the position here, like I said, we didn't reach that 5% threshold where I said, hey, you know what, this is getting a little dicey. Let me see what's going on. And we just absolutely flew. And I was in this trade for, we can check. I was in this trade for about 6 days. So almost a week before we were in profit on this. And then obviously, 7 days, 8 days in now. And we were obviously massively in profit. From our exact share price, our cost basis, we reached about 15% in gains, and that is basically just from today alone, after hours from yesterday into Friday. So 15% is no joke. We're up about $3,000. This was a lighter position for me, where when I'm only putting like 20K into the first, batch round of this is where I'm like, this is my initial position sizing, and then I add as we go lower. So assuming we did come lower, this is where I would have kind of rerun my setup, double check the fundamentals and whatnot. This is where I would have been like, all right, I can add to those positions. But since we kind of got it on the first entry here and flew, this is exactly where I'm like very happy to see this. Obviously $3,000 is, no joke, an amount of money, but still there was room to obviously add more. Now I do want to make it clear that I do have a limit order to sell the shares at the 273, and this is just because we're coming back to all-time highs. And the way I view all-time highs is there is genuinely nothing up here. There's no structure, there's nothing for us to bank off of. So this is kind of like no man's land, right? All the way up here from above this 278 is strictly just like a no man's land to me, where I'm like, you know, I don't know what could happen here. We could just rock it through, which would be amazing, or we could, you know, just test it and then fall all the way back down and start testing some more support levels. So this is why I always personally, and this is personal preference, I want to stress that this is personal preference, that I like to sell when we get to about all-time highs. I can see this resistance level at the 273.93, so I have a limit order to sell at the 273 level, and that's in place right now. So once we tag that, I assume that my orders will be filled, so we'll see how that goes, but that is there just for your information, and so you guys actually know where I'm tagging out of this position at. But overall, you know, great swing trade. And the last part and last form of confirmation for me, you guys have heard this so much from me now, but I will always harp on it. It is this 200-day SMA. This basically tells us if the overall bullish trend is intact. So if we're trading above it, we're very happy. This means, you know, that overall bullish trend is still intact. If we are trading below it, this is where the fundamentals have to be higher conviction, because if we're trading below it, this means that bullish trend is no longer intact. So we don't have that high time frame, oh yeah, we're still bullish, to bank on. So in a case like this, where we were still just trading above it, but we were kind of like testing it, this was a very pivotal point for me. And this is where I rely more on the fundamentals to have higher conviction in this trade setup. Being below the 200-day SMA does not immediately kill the trade. It is more of a warning of saying, hey, you need to be a lot more careful, because that bullish trend, we don't have that anymore. Do your due diligence, make sure that you actually have the fundamentals correct to have the higher conviction in this trade instead of just relying on all technicals. So obviously that did pay off. We saw a little bit of drawdown on this and then shebang. So that's great to see. And again, like this was the exact same trade on Microsoft, guys. Like this is where I entered the shares. I entered some drawdown. There was no support levels made at the low, so there's really nowhere to add in that case. You know, we saw a little bit of drawdown. We saw a bit of profit first, saw some drawdown. Microsoft obviously crushed their earnings as well. And bang, there you go. We're almost back to, you know, Microsoft actually is crazy down off their all-time high. So there is a lot of room for this specific trade. I know I already made a breakdown, but once we get back to the all-time high levels, probably around the 500, 550s is where I will probably, I'm going to set an alert right there actually, so I kind of am aware of that. But once we get back there, that's when I'll make a full trade breakdown, because as you can see, we timed this almost at the exact bottom. So Amazon, you know, same thing. Apple, this was literally our entry right here. I already made a video breakdown on this. This was the most phenomenal bottom tick I've seen on a swing trade. And we ran all the way, those back all the way up to all-time highs. And like the example I gave, you can see how we pushed up above all-time highs, made some good structure, and then now we're crashing below it. So this is where I'm going to start seeking a re-entry somewhere for another swing trade. But in a case like this example, I already made a trade breakdown. If you guys want to go watch that, I would highly recommend going to watch that, because again, back when I was looking at it, 10 to 15% off all-time highs, 5 to 10% off the most recent high, tapping into a key level of support. We literally tapped it. We were above the 200-day SMA for that bullish confirmation, and bang, we were flying. So overall, very happy with that. And again, this is just the same setup that I'd be running like every single week. This works extremely well on Mag 7 stocks, I find, because naturally these businesses should only go up in the long term. If you're running this on smaller caps, obviously, you know, your conviction needs to be a lot higher, or you're an insider. I don't know, who knows. But overall, phenomenal trade. This is obviously the last day of July. I'm recording this on July 31st. So this would put our swing trading to about $13,000 for the month, aside from selling options. Guys, I'm one of those gurus that, you know, I actually don't even want to call myself a guru, but I call out everything for free just because I make enough money from trading to sustain my life, where I don't really care to sell a course. I don't really care, you know, to like charge you guys for something. I do want to start like maybe like a community or something for you guys. I have a lot of fun ideas, you know, planned out. So if you guys haven't, leave a like, subscribe. Make sure to go and follow my Instagram at CYRN, where I basically am extremely active. I am launching a free community soon, so be on the lookout for that if you did not know that already. But overall, if you have any questions, leave a comment. Feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'm always happy to, you know, shoot around some ideas and talk about my trades or any questions that you might have. And you'll find that a lot of the resources I have already on my YouTube and my Instagram can be extremely helpful to answer those questions that you might have, the very common ones. So with that, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one.